Hello and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu, Cele. Now, South Africa's drive to create more entrepreneurs is likely to increase the number of people who are self-employed, and such individuals need to be aware of efficient ways to safeguard or fund their retirement. To tell us more, I'm now joined in our Cape Town studios by Brian O'Neill, who's the Head of Distribution at FNB Financial Advisory. Good to have you with us today, Brian. Perhaps if we do walk through this theme of driving entrepreneurship at individuals who are self-employed, let's pick up on what their options are actually when it comes to saving for retirement. What type of products are available on the market for them?
Gugu, thanks very much. So there are a number of options that are available to entrepreneurs. I think if you decide to start your own business, there are probably two things which you need to be aware of. Firstly, it's the need to start saving for retirement at the appropriate time. And then once you've actually identified that, and once your business is at the stage where you can start saving for retirement, it's then about getting some good advice about which products are available for you. You know, we see a lot of our clients who are self-employed. The one challenge is when you decide to start a new business, initially in that startup phase, your business actually requires capital from you. So most of the money that either you've saved, you're putting into your business to make sure that your business becomes successful. And even when your business then does start making some money, the temptation is always to reinvest. And what we then spend some time with our clients is helping them identify at which point their business moves from the startup phase into the growing phase, where at that stage you can actually start drawing a salary, getting some earnings from the business. And at that point it becomes important to get that discipline to start saving for retirement, to start diversifying some of the risk away from your business. And at that stage, when you are ready to start saving, then it's making a decision between whether you want to have discretionary funds, so funds that you can access again, or whether you are then going to go in compulsory funds, a retirement annuity, for instance, as an example.
But on that, Brian, doesn't this make the needs analysis cycle quite difficult? Because with a salaried individual, you know what their income is and how to calculate future incomes that they'll require. With entrepreneurs, the irregular cycles of income must make this slightly more difficult.
It does. One of the key things we spend time with entrepreneurs on is trying to help them identify the phases that they'll go through with their business. The startup phase, what their needs are then, what the risks are that they need to be aware of. Secondly, that business then moves into, I guess, at a high level into the growing phase, where now the business is stable, it no longer requires funding. And then the last phase is then when you need to actually try and realize some of the value in the business, because we're obviously very cognizant of one of the biggest assets that an entrepreneur can build up is also that value in the business, and it's understanding how to unlock that value and then figuring out what the appropriate time is then to exit and start realizing some of that value. But like you say, it is irregular, so hopefully one of the things we can do with entrepreneurs is spend some time with them to understand the cycles that their business is going to go through. And also, once you've done correct budgeting and forecasting for the business, you can then start getting a sense of when the cash flows will make sense for you to start taking money out of the business to invest. And then obviously there's a combination when you are starting to save of deciding whether you want to commit to monthly payments into a retirement annuity, into a discretionary investment, or whether it's more appropriate to do that annually. You know, what you can also do is once a year, once you've had a look at how your business has performed, at that stage you can also do lump sum investments into either retirement annuities or into discretionary type products. But that irregularity does make it quite tough, and it's important then to make sure as an entrepreneur that you stick to the discipline of making sure that you do start saving for retirement every year.
Let's start with retirement annuities. I take it that would be the best and most obvious place to start, given the benefits that are associated with such a savings vehicle.
Well, absolutely. So once you do start to save for retirement, it's then a case of having a look at the vehicles. So the immediate benefit with a retirement annuity is, depending on how your earnings are structured, you can get some tax benefits for the contributions that you make into a retirement annuity. The money that's invested in the retirement annuity isn't subject to any tax, so you don't pay capital gains or income tax in that retirement annuity, which is a significant benefit. And I guess, with that, there's certain restrictions that come with it, so you can't actually access those funds. So depending on how your personal tax situation looks, there are some significant benefits to that. Obviously, because it is retirement saving, it does come with those restrictions. You are unable to access those funds. So depending on the nature of the saving, if you're certain that you're not going to need these savings, the savings are going to be for your retirement. Retirement annuity makes a lot of sense. As I mentioned, they're tax benefits. If there are other savings that you have, but you are still nervous that your business in future might require some funding, whatever the case may be, it would make sense then to put it in a more discretionary type investment, into a unit trust portfolio, whatever the case may be. So if you ever did need to access those funds, you would be able to access them, but obviously the tax nature there is very different then.
What about additional voluntary payments into one's retirement annuity or alternative retirement savings vehicle?
So at the moment you can make additional lump sum investments into that. Your tax benefits obviously are limited in terms of the amount that you can contribute into retirement annuity that you can get the tax benefit on. You can contribute more than that, you just don't get the tax benefit on that. Any contributions that you make in any current year that you don't get the tax benefit on, you can roll over to the next tax year. And as I'm sure you know, the legislation on that's changing. Currently you can contribute or you can claim up to 7.5% of your non-retirement funding contributions, or your non-retirement funding income. You can get a tax deduction on that. And then from March next year, that's changing where you can claim up to 27.5% of your taxable income, limited to 350,000 Rand per annum. So there is a significant contribution that you can make, that you can get a tax deduction on, and you can make lump sums, and then that will then also add up to that allowance that you can get as a tax deduction, or you can roll it over to the next year.
Brian, I'd like to sidestep for a moment and take a look at the trend of encouraging entrepreneurship as well as self-employed individuals. So often we find these kind of individuals moving from salaried and fully employed jobs into the world of entrepreneurship and tend to dip into their pension fund savings in order to have sufficient capital for a startup. I take it naturally from a financial advisor's point of view, that's an absolute no-no. And we also have some regulatory moves like the retirement reforms which are trying to prevent this, right?
Absolutely. But the reality is when people do decide to move out of the corporate world and start their own business, certainly if we're working with clients before, then one of the things that we'll do is we'll try and work with them so that they can actually start saving towards the funding that they need. There are a range of funding options that are available to clients. Again, it's not our job to dictate to clients what they should or shouldn't do, but simply to highlight all of the different options available to them, the hidden costs that they sometimes incur by dipping into their pension fund when they resign from a company, and then also to make sure that they understand all of those implications when they make a decision about which funding to use. So like you've mentioned, it's always a temptation for people when they decide to start a new business to resign from their current employer, dip into their pension savings, but they sometimes forget that there's a significant tax impact there. You pay tax on that withdrawal that you make, and it's key that you're aware of what that cost is versus bank funding, funding via family, whatever the case may be. But once you've done that, it's also important to understand the opportunity cost, because you're not getting the benefit of compound interest on that. Now, don't get me wrong, most people who start a business do that because they believe that they're going to get a significant return out of the business that they start. But it's important to know what those costs are and weigh them up. And then as soon as the business is in a position to start helping you contribute back towards your retirement funds, then you need to instill that discipline and start doing that.
Just on the topic again of entrepreneurs, Brian, given the fact that their needs are so much more different because of the irregularities as well as uncertainty with regard to future income, doesn't this mean that the cost implications of their retirement savings will be more significant, given that they're investing in an RA, a unit trust, and perhaps an alternative means of savings?
Yeah, so I suppose, you know, on the one hand, there's a cost aspect of that. Often when you invest through a group scheme at work, you know, the costs there are very competitive because obviously it's a massive pool of individuals participating in that. There are one or two other benefits that you often get when you're part of a group scheme. Typically, there'll be some risk benefits, some disability, life cover, whatever the case may be. So when you do decide to become an entrepreneur, absolutely, you do go it alone. And that irregularity of income does pose some significant challenges, but that's usually where a good financial advisor can help you. Someone who can sit with you, understand exactly what your business is going through, understand exactly what your cash flow is going to look like over the next few years, and importantly, understand what your goals are. I think when we save towards retirement, it's important that someone sits with us, helps us articulate what our goals are, because that dictates the amount of money that we're going to need at retirement. And hopefully that person, by understanding your business, can then put the right solution in place and then help you maintain that discipline to get you from where you are to where you want to be.
I'm glad you touched on financial advice, because so often we think that you need to have that once a year meeting with the financial advisors. But in the case of an entrepreneur, I take it this might need to happen more frequently, as updates and changes might take place more often when you're in a different phase of your business.
Absolutely. So certainly when you initially sit with a financial advisor, what they will do is they'll craft a plan for you. And the goals that you're working towards are typically goals that wouldn't necessarily change in the short term. So if I think about the average entrepreneur out there, one of your goals would be to have a comfortable retirement. Some of your other goals, for instance, would be to provide for your children's education. Perhaps you like to travel overseas and you want to save towards an overseas holiday. So those goals all have different terms, and those goals don't necessarily change in the short term. Obviously, what does change if you're starting up a business is your financial position can change quite significantly in the short term. So certainly there's a lot of merit in having a far more frequent interactions with your financial planner, where you can actually sit down and say, well, these are what my goals are. These were the timeframes we initially set aside for them. These are the things that have changed in the short term. What changes do we need to make in the short term, and what are the impact on those goals? So definitely when you're an entrepreneur, your life certainly does seem to be more volatile, so it makes a lot of sense to chat far more often with your financial planner.
Well, we've certainly said quite a bit in the last few minutes of the show, but let's get a quick recap now of the key takeaways from tonight's discussion. Brian, as you've alluded to, it's imperative for entrepreneurs to have ongoing discussions with their financial advisors and planners. But for those who might have caught the tail end of our conversation tonight, what are the key elements that they need to consider?
I think for an entrepreneur, when we deal with entrepreneurs, one of the first things that we try and work through with them is to understand the different phases that they'll go through with their business, from startup, where the business is requiring capital, through to the growth phase, where the business can now start affording to pay them a salary, they can start getting some earnings out of that, to the point where they potentially want to start realizing some of the value in that business. So the first thing that we try and help entrepreneurs with is to try and understand at which phase you are with your business, because that clearly dictates your needs and that of your business. Once we've established that, I think the next thing that we need to work with entrepreneurs on is to make sure that they also remember the discipline that's required in retirement savings, the fact that they do need to diversify away from their business. You need to save towards your retirement. You need to start that as early as possible, because you get the benefit of the compounding of interest there. And once entrepreneurs are saving, then a good financial advisor will also sit with an entrepreneur, understand their personal tax position, and make sure that they put an investment solution in place that is the most appropriate for that entrepreneur.
Brian, thank you so much for your sound advice this evening. Highly appreciated hearing your insights tonight. But that's where we leave it for Personal Finance today. A big thank you once more to Brian O'Neill. He's the Head of Distribution at FNB Financial Advisory. Remember that you can also stay in touch and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or tweet myself at Gugulethu for more insights, and we can continue exchanging views and ideas. But that's it from us for tonight. Do be sure to keep in touch. For myself and the team, it's goodbye for now.